Zara pressed her scaled palm against the observation deck's cold metal surface as she watched the impossible unfold. Below her violet eyes, tracked the lone figure moving through the crimson wastes, where no living being had survived for over 3 centuries. The human called himself Jake, and he should have been dead within minutes of crossing the barrier. The radiation levels in the Forbidden Zone measured beyond fatal limits for every known species in the galaxy. Even the ancient Vorthak, who had built their empire on consuming deadly energies, had declared this place untouchable after their expedition teams dissolved into ash. The red sand held secrets that killed, and the twisted metal structures that jutted from the ground leaked poison that could melt through the strongest armor. Yet Jake walked forward with nothing but a basic environmental suit and a determination that made Zara's hearts beat faster. She had been assigned to monitor this sector for the past solar cycle, watching for scavengers foolish enough to test the boundaries. Most lasted mere moments before their life signs vanished from her scanners. But this human had been walking for 6 hours now. The communication array crackled with voices from the command. Ship above Zara's superior commander Thex demanded updates every few minutes. His disbelief matched her own when she reported that the human's vital signs remained stable. The medical sensors showed elevated heart rate and stress hormones, but no signs of the cellular breakdown that should have begun immediately upon exposure. Jake paused near a cluster of crystalline formations that glowed with malevolent energy. These structures had been the death of 12 different survey teams over the years. Their emanations could corrupt DNA and turn bone to powder. Yet the human approached them with careful steps, his scanner held high as he collected readings. Through the long-range viewers, Zara could see his face behind the helmet's transparent panel. He looked focused rather than afraid. His brown eyes swept the landscape with tactical awareness, rather than the blind panic that usually preceded death in this place. Something about his steady breathing pattern and measured movements suggested he understood dangers that others had missed. The human's communication system suddenly activated, and his voice filled Zara's monitoring station. The quality was poor due to interference from the zone's energy fields, but his words came through clearly. Enough here, he spoke to someone called Command Base, describing what he saw with technical precision. The formations contained traces of an unknown element that his equipment couldn't identify. The radiation patterns followed cycles that seemed almost deliberate rather than random. He mentioned finding fragments of technology that didn't match any known civilization. Zara found herself leaning closer to the screens as Jake continued deeper into the zone. Past. The crystal fields lay the shattered spires where reality itself seemed unstable. Ships that had crashed there decades ago flickered between states of existence, sometimes appearing whole and sometimes showing as scattered debris. The space between the spires twisted light and sound into impossible shapes. No scanner could penetrate that region effectively. Most monitoring equipment simply stopped functioning when pointed in that direction. Yet Jake walked toward it without hesitation, his stride never faltering even as the ground beneath his feet began to shift between solid rock and flowing liquid. The first spire loomed above him, a twisted column of black metal that pulsed with inner light. As Jake approached it, Zara noticed something that made her breathing stop. The readings from his suit showed his cellular activity actually increasing rather than breaking down. The deadly radiations that had killed so many others seemed to be having the opposite effect on his human biology. Commander Thex's voice cut through her observations, demanding explanations she couldn't give. The medical readings made no sense by any scientific standard she knew. The human should have been a corpse hours ago. Instead, his life signs suggested he was becoming stronger. Jake reached the base of the first spire and placed his gloved hand against its surface. The moment of contact sent energy readings through the roof on Zara's instruments. The spire's pulsing changed rhythm, matching something in the human's biological patterns. The twisted metal began to straighten slightly as if responding to his presence. Through the communication link, Jake reported that the structure felt warm despite the cold of space around them. He described sensations that shouldn't have been possible through his protective suit, claiming he could feel the metal's intent and purpose. His voice carried wonder rather than fear, as he spoke of patterns in the energy flow that seemed to welcome, rather than threaten. The second spire drew him forward, and Zara watched in amazement as similar changes occurred with each one he touched. The twisted columns slowly unwound themselves, and their malevolent glow softened to something that looked almost peaceful. The very landscape around Jake seemed to be healing, itself responding to his presence in ways that defied every law of physics she had studied. Hours passed as Jake moved through the heart of the Forbidden Zone areas that had been death traps for centuries, became passable under his influence. Ancient machinery buried in the red sand began to activate following programming that had waited eons for the right trigger. The zone's deadly radiations gradually decreased in intensity, as if being absorbed and converted by processes too complex to understand. Zara realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The human wasn't just surviving the zone, he was transforming it. His biology seemed perfectly adapted to neutralize the very energies that killed every other species. The ancient death trap was revealing itself as something else entirely, a tester filter designed to identify beings capable of restoration rather than destruction. Commander Thex's increasingly frantic communications went unanswered as Zara focused entirely on the miracle unfolding below. Jake had reached the zone's center where a massive structure of unknown origin waited. The building's architecture suggested it was older than any known civilization, its surfaces covered in symbols that shifted and changed as he approached. The moment Jake entered the ancient structure, every sensor in Zara's monitoring array activated simultaneously. Energy signatures that had remained dormant for millennia blazed to life, and the entire Forbidden Zone began to pulse with harmonious rhythms. The deadly wasteland was transforming into something that resembled a vast organic network, with Jake at its center. When Jake finally emerged from the central building, hours later the transformation was complete. The twisted spires now stood straight and beautiful, radiating gentle light instead of killing radiation. The red sand had taken on a golden hue, and strange plants were already beginning to grow in soil that had been barren for centuries. Zara's instruments showed that the zone's energy levels had not decreased, but had somehow been converted from destructive to generative forces. The same power that had killed so many was now nurturing new life. Jake walked back through the transformed landscape with steady steps, his vital signs showing not just survival, but enhancement from his journey. As the human reached the zone's boundary and activated his transport beacon to signal for pickup, Zara understood that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had been wrong. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive newcomers possessed abilities that surpassed even the ancient races. Jake looked up toward her observation post before departing, as if he could sense her presence across the vast distance between them. Lay a transformed world that proved humanity's potential, extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. The Forbidden Zone had found its guardian, and the universe would never be quite the same.